and welcome to the FringeRX podcast. I'm Anna Strong, and I'm on a mission to find a cure for autoimmune. We talk education, healing, support, do's, don'ts, wins, and losses, all to improve our quality of life. Hello. Welcome to FringeRX. I'm excited to have you here. Is this Alice?
This is Alice. Hi there.
Hi, Alice. How have you been? Let's get right down into it. What kind of autoimmune do you have that you're bringing us some information in on today?
Well, I actually have two autoimmune diseases. I was formerly diagnosed with both of them in 2019. So at this moment, I have ulcerative colitis, which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease, as well as something called undifferentiated connective tissue disease, which is sort of this broad autoimmune condition that touches on elements of scleroderma, rheumatoid arthritis, and lupus. So it's sort of in the middle.
Yeah, it's a connective tissue disorder, which is basically everything in our bodies are connective tissues.
Yeah. It's like a non-diagnosis diagnosis is what I tell people.
Can you tell us when you, started feeling like something, was askew?
Sure. So I'm 27 now, and I started to notice it really kind of all started back when I was in high school. I'm a professional classical musician. I've been studying viola since I was 13 and violin since I was 8 before that. And it's a very high stress life. And when I was in high school, my senior year, I was actually applying and auditioning at a bunch of different universities to major in music. And it was at that time that I started to notice some gastrointestinal distress. I kind of realized I was going to the bathroom probably more than I should be, and chalked it up to stress because it was a very intense process for me, and there were a lot of nerves involved, and I tend to have some issues in that department when I'm nervous. But once I got into college and started going to school and getting through that audition process, I was still having some problems. And I actually, prior to those auditions, my senior year, ended up seeing a gastroenterologist because I was having, pardon the bluntness, but frequent diarrhea,
Right.
which I have no problem
We hear that on
discussing,
this
so.
show. Don't worry about
Okay,
it. Yeah.
I'm glad. I do potty talk a lot. So, but I was diagnosed with something called dientamoeba fragilis, which was a parasite from some contaminated water, and at that point went on an insane amount of antibiotics. So I do think that may have played a factor in what kind of started my GI problems.
Right.
I don't think it necessarily led to my chronic inflammation and being diagnosed with autoimmune diseases, but
The stress factor is a major cause for an autoimmune. It's almost like, it's a constant state of like the fight or flight syndrome that overwhelms your immune system and it doesn't know when to shut off. And if you keep that going for too long, that does seem to be a trigger. I have specialists that are, that I talk to that are in research, and they say that they don't know what causes an autoimmune disease. And I go like, I do. How come you guys don't know? I mean, it's toxic environments. Mold is a big one. I know.
yes, yeah.
Lyme disease is one, and then the stress is a huge one, and of course you have to have the DNA, chip to even be, lucky enough to get one. But yeah, it's amazing that so many stories are the same. It's a stress environment, and I don't know. You said you had a parasite also?
Yes. So that's sort of another element of my health journey that I almost forget about because it was so long ago and there's been so much that's happened since then. I forget. But that actually happened between my junior and senior year of high school. I went to this small town in Northern California and drank contaminated water and didn't realize it and ended up with a parasite. But after I got rid of that parasite, my symptoms were still remaining and then continued to kind of progressively get worse throughout my time in college. And like you were just mentioning, stress is such a massive factor in autoimmune disease. And I can pinpoint exactly the moments in my life where I've had these significant flare-ups, whether they are of my IBD or my UCTD, and they are all incredibly stressful moments in my life,
Hmm.
which is sort of interesting.
I had a parasite too, and they didn't diagnose me for it, but I just lost a lot of weight, and
Hmm.
I was in Mexico at the time just for vacation, and I came back and I just got really sick, and this was right along, the same time that I was diagnosed. But I took this pill called bitter leaf, and
Hmm.
it got rid of it without the pharmaceuticals or the antibiotics, which was a blessing because I mean I gained weight and everything. It was completely a natural thing to do. It's called bitter leaf. You can do it in liquid form. There's also supplements out there, and it's just a good thing to try. It worked for me. I know it's not going to work for everybody, but it worked for me. So what? Now you said you're a musician. What instrument do you play?
I'm a violist, so I play viola. I also play violin occasionally and teach both, but I have my degrees in viola performance.
So you made it all through college, even though you had an autoimmune disease. Very good.
Yes, yeah. That was pre-diagnosis. So I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and throughout my time as an undergraduate student, I didn't have any flare-ups per se, but I did get sick a lot, and that was the first time in my life that I had ever really been sick. You mentioned mold earlier. There was mold in my dorm that we didn't know about at
Mm-hmm.
one point, and I got mono. I had strep throat several times. All of these things I'd never had before, and after I graduated, I decided to go to graduate school at Juilliard in New York City, and my next big flare up happened right after I moved and right after I started that degree, and that was actually separate from my gastrointestinal problems. That was my connective tissue disease that, again, had not been diagnosed at that time flaring up. And I ended up in the emergency room and had to undergo all these tests. And I had something called a pleural effusion in my chest cavity. So I had 2 liters of fluid in my chest. And
Wow.
my lungs were so inflamed that my lungs couldn't even expand. They were just hitting my rib cage, and I was in incredible pain, and it was just absolutely awful. And so that was kind of really in 2016 when my autoimmune sort of journey, I would say, formally started, and I started to see a rheumatologist and get to the bottom of some of these things that I had been dealing with for a long time and kind of ignoring up to
Right.
that
Well,
point.
you were first getting symptoms when you were in high school, and it took you
Hmm.
all the way after college for you to get a diagnosis. That's
Formerly all the
incredible.
way after grad school. Yeah. I was told for many years by a doctor who I no longer am with because I have some very strong opinions on his his way of diagnosing things, that I just had irritable bowel syndrome, which I do have. But there was no follow-up. There was a lot of comments made, you're so young, you're very healthy, it's probably just take some fiber, take some probiotics, and you'll be okay. And I do still take both of those things, but there was an underlying cause. And I do often wonder if I had been tested sooner, if maybe they would have found this inflammation before it got really bad, before I had to go to the hospital and had to take prescription medications. It's sort of interesting to think about that.
I really do think there has to be more education within our medical community because a lot of doctors don't know this and they don't do the right blood tests for people that are coming in, and a lot of people get the whole oh, it's just in your head, and you know
Hmm.
I can't find anything wrong with you, and it's just a shame because I think, yeah, if they do get diagnosed sooner, you can kind of turn it around. Are you doing any holistic or fringe treatments?
Yes, so I'm not sure if this counts necessarily, but when I was diagnosed with both of those diseases, again, it wasn't until 2019 that I had both of my official diagnoses, even though I was struggling for years before that. And when that happened, I kind of dramatically changed my lifestyle. So I will say that I am currently relying on several different prescription medications. I get infusions of a medication called Remicade for my IBD. I take something called hydroxychloroquine, or Plaquenil is the brand name, for my connective tissue disorder. So I am still relying on those, but I changed my life in a way that I think has really impacted my diseases. And by that, I mean I changed my diet completely. So up until quite recently, stuck to a paleo diet and avoided inflammatory foods, which really impacted my symptoms on a day-to-day basis. I made practicing mindfulness and focusing on things like sleep and sleep consistency a really big part of my daily routine, as well as exercising daily. And that was something that I never did before. I mean, I'm a classical musician with absolutely no athleticism whatsoever. And, I was always worried about my hands and my arms and my career, so I couldn't really do anything too intense. And after that diagnosis, I felt so out of control of my body. I just felt like I had to take control of the small things around me, including my food and my working out. So I started doing yoga, and now I exercise 5 to 6 times a week, strength training and cardio, and it's just really made me so much more aware of my body so that I am able to notice those days that I wake up and maybe feel more fatigued than normal, or I can actually almost sense inflammation when it's coming in my body, and I get like night sweats are a big thing for me when my inflammation is high. So I wake up in the middle of the night all sweaty and it's really attractive. Um, so I'm not sure if that counts necessarily as fringe RX, but I definitely count those changes I've made in my life as equally as important as the medications I'm currently relying on, in addition to supplements and things like that.
What supplements are you? What are you doing there?
I
I've
so
got
I
like a list of stuff I do. It's vitamin D, vitamin
Right.
this, vitamin that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
and it's
Well,
hard to
so
take them
I
all in
had
one day.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard to keep track of what they are all the time. And yeah, I've taken pictures. I've actually posted on my Instagram pictures of my pills because there's so many. But I actually had a really my worst flare up to date, in the fall of 2020, and lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, was incredibly malnourished and really low in a lot of things. And so I started taking, I actually had to go on prednisone, which I'm sure you're all too familiar with, because I was pretty close to having to go to the hospital for going to the bathroom 20 times a day and not being able to really keep anything in. So I had to go on that, which I just recently got off. So yay.
Yay.
um, but train of thought. Oh, my supplements. Um, I had to start taking vitamin D. I actually had to get some iron infusions because I was incredibly anemic from a lot of blood loss through that process. I take calcium daily. I take curcumin to help with inflammation. Um,
do,
and
do you take vitamin K?
I take a multivitamin that may have vitamin K in it, but I don't take it specifically. Is that the creatinesis? Is that what that is, or no?
I'm not familiar with that term,
Okay.
but no, vitamin K is really good for because you have the connective tissue disorder, and it puts more calcium in your system than you're supposed to have. The vitamin K keeps it out of your arteries, so it doesn't build up. So
Okay.
if you're going to take vitamin D, it's very important to take the vitamin K too.
Right.
And it's a smart thing to do.
Of
But
course.
what others are you on?
Vitamins, I think that's it for now.
Yeah,
That's all I can remember at the moment.
I'm,
My
I'm
memory is
I
just
double up on
atrocious.
fish oil too. I'm like a big fish oil nut. So
Oh,
and
yes.
vitamin E.
Also
Yeah,
fish oil.
yeah.
Yeah.
So are you because you have the connective tissue and the scleroderma? Do you get Renard syndrome at all?
I don't actually. Surprisingly, I haven't had any issues with that. I was literally last week just diagnosed, it's not really an autoimmune thing, but it is an inflammatory issue with perioral dermatitis that I've never experienced before in my life. Um, and I don't know what that's been brought on by, but it's just another sort of kind of obscure thing to add to my list of obscure things. And my doctor basically said, my dermatologist said, well, we don't really know why this happens. I can't really tell you why it's happening to you or how to prevent it from happening again, but it's an inflammatory issue. So
Have you checked with your doctor, your rheumatologist, to see if he knows anything about stem cell therapy at all?
I have not explored that at this point, no.
I think that's a huge issue that we all have to start pushing for, because they're doing all kinds of clinical trials, but they're not doing anything with autoimmune, and I think they should. Because, I mean, I went down to Mexico when it wasn't available up here, and we try to claim the United States as, you know, in the forefront of the whole world as far as the medical community, and we're not. We're not dealing with this. So, you know, I want to see a cure out there. I want to see somebody, you know,
Right.
actually do some major research so that we can find a cure for, you know, all these people and us, you know. And,
Yeah,
yeah, it would be nice, you know.
that would be nice.
Now, you're doing the paleo diet still?
So I've recently reincorporated some more grains. So I was completely grain free for about a year and a half. And then I've now been adding back rice and oats because I've been working with a nutritionist because I lost so much weight and I was really struggling and I was missing some vitamins, partly from the flare and partly from my diet.
Right.
So I have re-added those back in and I'm tolerating them well as like some yogurt, tiny amounts of dairy. But for the most part, I really avoid gluten and corn and refined sugar. Those are my three main sort
Yeah,
of
that's a good
triggers that I've
idea. That's what
noticed.
I do too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the AIP, I'm on that one, and
Yeah.
I've been on that
Yeah.
one for years. And I do introduce stuff, and I do have rice, and it was like the first time I had rice, it was like, oh my God, now I'm not starving
I know.
anymore. You know, give me some carbs. But
Seriously,
it
I
did
know.
help a lot. It did help a lot. So
Yeah, AIP I know has helped a lot of people. I attempted it in graduate school, but it was very hard to do as a student living in New York City.
I imagine.
It was a big time commitment and kind of expensive, so I didn't commit to it. But in the event that I, continue to have flare-ups, that may be something I explore, especially because I don't really want to be on these medications for the rest of my life if I can help it. I just am trying to get to a more stable place so that I can get off of them.
Well, I want you to, you're in California, you're not far away. As soon as this COVID-19 is gone, we're going to have you come in and play for us. We'll do some
Oh,
musical
I would love
rendition.
that.
Yeah, show your talent. It would be
I
fabulous.
haven't performed in a year.
I know with everything that's going on, but yeah, we'd love to have you in. So I want
Well,
to
I would
thank
love
you
that as
so
well.
much for spending your time with us, and you're sharing your story with everyone, and it helps,
Thank
you
you so
know.
much for having me.
It helps spread awareness, and that's what we want to do. We want to promote research and get everybody to like understand that just because we look good doesn't mean that we feel good.
Yeah, it'd
There,
be a whole invisible illness thing.
yeah, and we want to find a cure. So please like, share,
Absolutely.
and subscribe, and join our Patreon community. And we're producing a documentary, and hopefully it's going to bring new treatments to light the masses. I just want to thank everybody who is participating in this series, because it's so important to know people's journeys. And Patreon is how we are able to keep doing this. All this we're doing is just to find a cure. So please click on the link in the description and sign up now.